Thank you very much, Julia, and thank you to all for participating in this discussion with Cliff Paredes. It's a great pleasure to to have the possibility to host a speaker such as Cliff, and I immediately say that the focus of the discussion today is twofold, because on the one hand we will discuss about entrepreneurship and SMEs, and on the other about internationalization. And on our side, there is an interest and an effort in understanding better how these dimensions connect in the domain of higher education. But without further ado, let me introduce our speaker, Cliff Paredes, who is the Associate Regional Director for International Trade at the SBDC, which stands for Southwest Texas Border Small Business Development Center. Cliff has led since 2001 the SBDC at the University of Texas, and this network provides business services and entrepreneurship services to small businesses based in Texas. However, Cliff also manages the UTSA Center for Global Development that helps countries adopt and adapt the SBDC methodology. So also an international dimension. I want to give you some numbers to show you the importance of these networks. There are, as of 2019, so last year, there were activities of SBDC or associated to SBDC in 23 countries in the Americas, 255 SBDC operating outside the US, with a lot of advisors, more than 24,000 jobs created, over 40,000 jobs retained, and so on and so forth. This is a long presentation. I could have done a very short presentation and say that I'm very happy to be with Cliff, because he is a champion of sustainable entrepreneurship and SMEs. Cliff, I ask you directly the first question, which is related to the presentation, and I would like you to tell us how this SBDC network evolved and the way in which has become international. Cliff, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and good morning from Texas, and I know it's good afternoon or good evening for some of you. Thanks to the OECD for the invitation and the Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia. I think it's a very interesting story. First, I'd like to mention, you'll hear the acronym SBDC, SBDC, SPDC. It stands for Small Business Development Center, and it's a small business assistance model that was begun in the United States in the late 1970s. And essentially what it does is it links government, it links the private sector, and it links higher education to help grow the small business sector. And so in the United States, there's over 1,100 SBDC, so Entrepreneurship Assistance Centers, at universities located all over the United States. Again, they're funded by the federal government, and it's matched with local funding, state funding, and then also higher education funding. And so what SPDCs do is they provide no cost, completely free, one-on-one long-term advising, market research assistance, and training for small business clients. We serve startups, so we help startup entrepreneurs, but the main focus of our business model is with the established business sector. And so in most countries where we visit the established business sector, there's a lot relating to startup entrepreneurship, but there's very little relating to helping those existing businesses start and grow. So, so those are the basic services. What makes the SPDCs a little bit different, and I probably think the biggest difference is they're 100% focused on creating economic impact. This is not an entrepreneurship program. This is an economic impact and job creation program, essentially taking government, higher education, and the private sector, focusing those forces to maximize the creation and capture of results. So it's focused on economic impact. The model is very flexible to the marketplace. So if you have an SPDC in New York City and an SPDC in Hawaii, or an SPDC in a very rural area, they all implement the same methodology, but the services that are offered are based on the needs of that local marketplace. And that's necessary because the goal is creating results. And so it's very flexible. Relating to COVID, a large portion of our business now is helping all of these businesses survive, recover, and then be positioned for future growth. And so we help businesses in the good times, we help businesses in the bad times. We're a little bit counter-cyclical in that nature. Internationally, so the economic impact numbers that were given before were for the SPDCs located outside the United States. If we're talking about inside the United States, we're talking 150,000 plus jobs created. We're talking 5 billion in increase in sales, billions of dollars in access to capital. So it is an economic impact producing monster, primarily located at universities. In 2003, we were approached by some Mexican universities that wanted to adopt the methodology. We had no idea what we were doing. We tried to essentially share the methodology, but what happened was you had a number of universities starting this effort, but the national government was not engaged. And so you essentially had the national government kind of, working against the SPDCs. In 2009 is when we had the first government come to us and say, we need to create jobs. So in 2009, the government of El Salvador came and we assisted them in startups, structuring, funding their SPDC networks. And now in most of Central America, they're SPDCs, all of Colombia, all of Chile. It's very important to mention, we share the methodology, but the government of El Salvador owns, operates, funds their SPDC network. The government of Chile has 51 centers all across Chile located at universities. They control and fund their SPDC network. And so what I have learned in my short time, 20 years of visiting different countries, seeing entrepreneurship programs, what I have found is the SPDC methodology is the only proven way to grow the small business sector on a national scale and on a scale that will impact the national economy. Now, you'll have other programs that, at a university or a municipality that do great work. But when you're talking about a national context, you're talking about a national program, the SPDCs are the only proven methodology that creates economic impact on a scale that actually matters. And higher education plays a very important role in these efforts.
Thank you very much, Cliff. You just mentioned higher education. So,
sorry, Julia, because I wanted to go ahead. There is a no, please, sorry.
Okay, so you just mentioned higher education. Cliff, what can you tell us about how teaching and learning is connected to the activities you carry out to support MSMEs? And also how these activities to support MSMEs are also connected to research activities at the University of Texas at San Antonio. What can you tell us, Cliff?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So SBDCs are located at universities on purpose. And so an SPDC that's located at a university, in our case, the University of Texas at San Antonio, we can leverage research resources. So our library, I'm literally talking, they have hundreds of thousands of dollars of market research resources that are there that we can utilize to help our clients. We utilize the knowledge of our professors. And so there's a lot of interactions between SPDCs and the subject matter experts in the university. So professors contribute their time and efforts, and we utilize students. And so students, they participate in what we call service learning internships, where they can do market research for clients. We have graphic design students doing, menus, web pages, logos for small businesses. We have accounting students working in small businesses doing their accounting systems, inventory systems. students helping with social media. And so the SPDCs are in constant collaboration with the university. And from our university's point of view, service learning is extremely important. And what I've seen in my history is that students that work in the SPDCs, they learn a very important skill, problem solving in the real world, because they're working with SPDC advisors, they're working with real clients, they're doing research. And so what we have found, and what a lot of employers have found, I mean, my university is not Harvard. We're not, a top tier academic institution, but who's hiring the graduates who intern with us? Goldman Sachs, the Federal Reserve Bank, large accounting firms. And so because the students, essentially leave with this knowledge of how to solve real world problems. SPDCs, in our case, play a very important role in technology commercialization. So our university has technology commercialization programs for their university, the professors. So they're doing research. They come up with new technologies. It could be biotech. It could be engineering. What SPDCs do is we work hand in hand with the technology commercialization office at the university and help create the market commercialization plan for that innovation or that technology. We link them with the private sector to help them funding. And so in the United States, it's actually very common that you have technology SBDCs, so specialty SPDCs that focus on technology commercialization, that essentially serve as the bridge between higher education and the private sectors, and especially investors. And just one quick story to tell you, this is actually a very recent success story. We had a student, this was probably about 8 years ago, an international student from Mexico, Luis Gonzalez. He worked with us. He was a market research intern, very smart person. Him and his some other students came up with a new technology, a cloud-based technology that essentially allowed real-time inventory management for vending machines. So all the vending machines, self-serve, that are located in all the offices, they created a cloud-based inventory system. So this was something that they created. It was an innovation. So Luis took his experience, his education that he learned at UTSA. He took his internship experience. He then became a client of the San Antonio SPDC. And so he became a client. We helped him start. We helped him get established. We are now helping him to export. I think they're exporting to 18 different countries now. And it's a huge success story. So this is a great example of how you are taking student innovation. You're providing them an opportunity to learn. You're then helping them commercialize that technology and create results. And so, I see this, the SPDCs, I think the future, and especially if this expands to Europe or to Asia, where you'll have a lot more interaction between institutions of higher education on technology commercialization efforts, linking researchers together and then working together to commercialize these different technologies. So SPDCs were right in the middle of these efforts, linking students, research, university resources, professors to help create real world economic impact results.
Yeah, thank you, Cliff. This is really, music for our ears, because it's a lot of what we want to develop with the geography of higher education. But it's the last point that you raised. This is about impact, about funding. So it would be very important to discuss with us the way in which you measure things, you measure your impact, and the way in which you fund your activities based on this measurement. Is a measurement of success also. So,
yeah, no, that's another really good question. Something that also differentiates the SPDCs from other small business assistance methodologies is measurement. We measure everything, every client interaction, how many hours we invested, demographic information about the clients, training program participations, all economic impact is all registered and captured in a database that we use called NeoSera. It's essentially the client management system, customer relationship management system of the SPDCs. And so management, when I go and I visit countries, and then they'll be, every country's already doing something relating to entrepreneurship. But when I ask them about the results, why are there not more economic impact results? They will always say, well, no, it's we don't have good advisors, or we don't have good services, or we don't have good programs. That's never the issue. And I'm talking about in developing countries, that is never the issue. The issue is they don't measure anything. They have no idea where they're investing their time. They're not capturing the results. And so because we capture everything in Neosera, again, every client interaction, every hour of advising, every training program participation, every economic impact, we're able to use that data to analyze performance and to improve center operations. And so, we measure everything. The other thing is that we're performance-based. Every SPDC and every SPDC advisor has goals, economic impact and productivity goals, clients, hours of advising, jobs created, loans, business expansions, etc. If people do not meet these goals, they have to find something else to do. If my center doesn't meet its economic impact goals, the risk is that they'll close us and invest that money somewhere else. So how the SPDCs are funded, it's off of annual contracts. And so, every year the federal government of the United States, the state of Texas in our case, and our university essentially funds this project. And it says, for this money that we're giving you, this budget we're giving you, these are the economic impact results that we want to see. And so there's a relationship between funding and results. Those results should increase every year the SPDCs are in operation. And the secret to this, and why so many countries are interested in this methodology, the US government is not doing this out of the kindness of their heart. The state of Texas is not doing this because they love giving money away to, funding government programs. They're doing this because they make money off of this program. So if we're helping a large number of companies create economic impact, hire people, sell more, get financing, they're paying more in taxes. So across the United States, the government of the United States receives over $3 in tax revenue for every dollar that's invested in the program. And that's how we create sustainable programs. So when I'm working in Guatemala, when I'm working in Chile, when I'm working with Colombia, and I'm helping them start their SPDC program, what I'm thinking about is year 5. By year 5, I want them to be able to produce enough economic impact where they're generating a positive return on investment for the government. And then, sometimes people say, oh, well, the SPDCs will become self-sufficient and they'll be able to charge clients. That never happens. How we justify our existence is by creating this economic impact. And because of that, when we have changes in government, so Chile is a great example. You had a left-leaning government leaving office, you had a right-leaning government coming in. What happened to the SPDCs? Nothing. The tendency in a lot of countries, there's election, they get rid of all the previous programs. Well, because the SPDCs are generating results, the new government always has, job creation, building the small business sector on their political platform. So how we create sustainable SPDC networks is by delivering a positive return on investment for the governments. And then another very important thing I forgot to mention at the beginning, the SPDC methodology reduces or removes duplication and fragmentation. So if you were to ask the US federal government, what is your small business program to help the small business sector grow? They will say the SPDCs. If you ask the state of Texas, what's your small business program? They'll say the SPDCs. If you ask the city of San Antonio, what is the program that you're using to grow the small business sector? The SPDCs. If you ask the University of Texas at San Antonio, SPDC. So rather than everybody doing their own thing in a fragmented manner, we have one program where everybody is contributing, everybody is focused on a long-term, sustainable, and economic impact producing program. So that's how we maintain operations.
So Cliff, thank you, because basically it's an open source platform that you can take and adapt to your content, to your ecosystem, and to follow up on measurement. So I understand that measurement helps you adapting also to the ecosystem, because you have to measure also a part of your activities, also the characteristics and the features of the ecosystem. And then my question is also if measurements helps you with the academic community, because I guess that there is a cultural disconnect at a certain point that you have to deal with. So could you please also assess these aspects?
Yeah, there is a little bit of a cultural disconnect in that sense, but one thing that hasn't been done is, I know that there has been some academic studies on the SPDC methodology. I mean, again, we're tracking all of this information year after year after year. And again, we're utilizing this information to optimize, every year, actually our fiscal year just ended a few days ago. And so what I'm going to be doing actually today, tomorrow, and the next day, I'm going to be analyzing the final data. Where did the economic impact come from? What client segments, what industries, who's generating the results? And then me as an SPDC director, I'm going to invest more resources in those client segments and those industries that are generating more results. And so there is sometimes a little bit of a disconnect with the academic side, but again, I think, going forward, analysis, that's one of the things that we want to do on an international scale, is start doing more big data analysis of all the SPDC performance, so that we can compare, what's happening, but also predictive. What would happen if we're making these types of changes. And so, yes, measurement is a core feature of the SPDCs, and I think it would provide for professors opportunities to for sure study this further.
Thank you very much. I saw that there are a zillion questions, so I know we have 5 minutes more to discuss. I don't know if Julia wants to follow up a little bit with a question. Otherwise, we could open the floor to questions.
Yeah, let's move to the Q&A, as there are so many questions, so we'll have more time to address them.
Anne, the floor is yours.
I'm gonna go first, if that's okay, Raffaele.
Georgia, go ahead.
Yes, Cliff, thank you so much for these insights. One question is, how do centers within the SBDCs work together across regions and also between countries?
Yeah, there's a constant sharing of information and best practices. And again, I should have mentioned this earlier, I liken the SPDC methodology as to like an iPhone operating system, because we all have we're all operating essentially the same manner. It's easier to share, best practices, and that's a constant effort. Where SPDCs innovate, they create, that's a core feature. So we're always changing, we're always adapting. But then when other SPDCs see something that is working, there's a mechanism to share that. So there's a constant sharing of best practices. The other area of sharing that we're doing right now between international SPDC networks is we're exchanging clients. And so right now we are doing matchmaking for clients of the Colombian SPDC network, the Salvadoran SPDC network, and they're doing the same for us. And so there's also a constant interchange of clients. The future of all of this is what we're trying to do at the end of the day, and and again, as time goes on, I believe more and more that this is going to happen, is that we are going to tie together the entire small business ecosystems of each country. So every country that has an SPDC network, they'll have Neosera, they'll have all their information in a database. We are in the progress of working out a means to connect all of that data together, so clients can connect with each other on a massive scale. universities can connect with each other, technology commercialization professionals can connect with each other, but that's already, collaboration is already baked into the DNA of the SPDC methodology.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Georgia. Cliff, thank you for your excellent insights. We just had another follow-up question. Could you specify in 3 points, just to give us a bit more information on the SBDC methodology?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's focused on results. It's focused on efficiency. And so, you know, it's very difficult to explain the methodology in a very, but it's measurement, it's efficiency. The other thing that we do is we serve masses of businesses. So in Texas, we have a series of centers that in our community, there's about 150,000 existing businesses. In a given year, 20% of those businesses pass through our doors, either advising or training. And so, you know, essentially we utilize data measurement. We're very efficient. You know, we measure the average number of hours that we're working with startups. We're focused on the needs of the established small business sector. And the needs are pretty much universal. Every small business, I want to sell more, I need capital to grow, and I need assistance in management, you know, HR, accounting, cost. That's where we generate 90% of the economic impact. But it's adjusting those services specifically to the needs of that community. So that's, I mean, again, it's a very broad subject, and the methodology is very easy to understand. And it's very simple, but it's very difficult to implement. Requires discipline.
So if I can follow up to this point, it means that if I am a small entrepreneur and I want to develop my business, I can, or I have an idea that I want to try to upscale or implement, I can knock on your door, and you are located in the university, in the case of the SBDC in Texas, and then I access to a series of business services that you just illustrated or named, but also if I have a business idea with some technological requirements with some, I can also access the research facilities of the university. And then there is the possibility to host some intern coming from the university, helping me developing my idea or my business. Is that correct, more or less?
Yeah, that's correct. Anybody with an idea can come, and it could be a very simple idea, a restaurant, or it could be a technology-related business, and then we can link them to the university for help in developing that technology or testing that technology. But one thing, that process, what you just mentioned, seems very simple. But in the SPDCs, as soon as somebody knocks on the door, we're implementing intake processes. So right away, we're asking, have you started a business before? Have you tell me more about your idea. We segment that client, and that client goes through an intake process. So basically basic training that we route everybody through. And so we have very sophisticated client intake processes that will route a startup entrepreneur because we want to invest the minimum amount of time necessary to help that person start. Now, if we have a person that wants to start their business, they have a great idea, but they're lazy, they don't want to work on their business, they want to write their business plan, we say goodbye. We tell you from the very beginning, I am here to help you create results. Those results are going to be dependent on your efforts. If you are not going to put forth efforts, we are not going to work with you. So now on the established business side, we have very sophisticated client attraction processes. So we probably spend way more time in going out into the community and bringing those established businesses into our center, because we can help them create more economic impact in less time as compared to a startup. And so the things that I'm mentioning to you sound very simple on the surface, but it's very sophisticated in terms of intake and how we channel clients and how we measure each step of the way.
Thank you.
I think I'm up next, if you appreciate sort of the bombardment of questions, but we're drawing a lot off of the very active chat. And actually, this is just building off of the point you were just making about how you sort of work on client attraction. And one of the questions we had is how your centers engage with SMEs who are not traditional partners of universities, who maybe aren't R&D focused or just the nature of their business. They're not usually working with AGIs.
We go out and get them. Every SPDC. So our ability to generate economic impact is dependent on the quality of the client that we're working with. And so again, the big hole in the marketplace right now when it comes to entrepreneurship or small business assistance programs, are the established micro and small business. Nobody's helping them. And so when you go and we work with chambers of commerce, we work with banks, we work with, and basically they serve as a referral mechanism, but every SPDC has a proactive client attraction process to bring those businesses, those established businesses that have a greater potential to generate economic impact into our center. And we experience tremendous results with that. And so that's really one of the reasons why our university has an SPDC. We're essentially bringing the university in a very proactive manner to the private sector, the business community.
And then I'm going to ask another question that sort of builds up the chat, which is you spoke about sort of how your center's funded and sort of how each year there's sort of a refocusing of resources. And something we hear a lot in Europe is a lack of long-term sustainable funding means no one's willing to invest in something being successful. So I guess what I would be interested in knowing is how sort of your university and you get the commitment sort of to invest in making this a success. As you said, there's 5-year plans when your funding might only be year-on-year contingent.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we can, that's probably when countries are first exploring whether or not to adopt this methodology, we explain to them the long-term nature of this. This isn't a program that you'll operate in a year and you're done. This is an ongoing, and so we work with the governments. One of the things when we transfer the methodology, of course, we're providing training for universities on how to operate the centers, but we're also providing advising and training for the government on how to create a program that will span multiple elections, will span decades. And so what we can do, and one of the things that we try to get them to do, is to create a formal legislative framework for the SPDC. So in the United States, there's a law, the Small Business Development Center Act. El Salvador, there's a law relating to the SPDCs in El Salvador. And so one of the things, and again, we understand that doesn't happen in year one, but that, those discussions year 3, 4, when we're talking with the government, okay, look at the success that you have, look at the economic impact that's being generated. How do you build this so it continues forward? And all the governments that we worked with, what we tell them is, don't let all of these efforts go to waste. Don't let the next government that comes in, and I apologize for speaking directly, but I said, what I tell them is assume your successor is going to be an idiot. How do you make this idiot proof so that the next government, even somebody who's, totally against your party, will continue this? And so that we work a lot on that from the very beginning, the long-term nature, that this is not something that you're going to do 2 years and then forget about it. This is a governmental commitment. And the U.S. government also works. So the U.S. government is also advocating for this as well. So it's a very important question, and it's something that again doesn't happen overnight.
If I might just follow up, I think obviously there's sustainability from a government perspective, but also from a university perspective. They've got resources are tight in a lot of universities, and they're investing in this as well. If they don't have sort of 5 years of funding ahead of them, where does the commitment come from your institution? Other than just you do this sort of part of your civic role?
Yeah, every SPDC director has to understand the needs of their university. and they have to understand where their program fits in with the strategic plan and direction of the university. So it's the job, and this is one of the things that we provide training on, is how to communicate stakeholder relationship management. And so your university president, your dean, or your vice president for innovation is a funding stakeholder. So if you're not constantly communicating to them that, listen, this is the best thing that's ever happened to this university. I'm harassing my, university president, my university, VP for research and development with all of these successes. So we're constantly feeding them. And so, the other thing too that's incredible, one of the things that we do at the very beginning is we take people to Washington, D.C., and they speak to the U.S. Congress Small Business Committee. And the thing that I'm always very impressed with was you can really pick any congressman anywhere in the United States, and you ask them about the SPDC without any notes, without anything. They can tell you the benefits. Listen, in my community, the SPDCs are creating jobs. It's the same way with the university president, because we're constantly feeding them, information on how this program is beneficial. I mean, literally last week, I sent that success story of a UTSA student that is now exporting to, now 20 plus countries. Look what we're doing to contribute to the university. So it doesn't happen by magic. There's no magic pill where a university will say, I'm going to fund this forever. There's a saying, we sing for our supper, we sing for our dinner. So we're always producing results, and we're always we always realize that the university president has to understand, the funders have to understand the benefits of this.
Thank you. I'll pass it back to Georgia for our last question.
Yes,
yes, but before, sorry, I take advantage of my role. But Cliff, do you think that with this governance and with the infrastructure you have, you could also operate like a development agency? Because changing ecosystem. So if you are an ecosystem that is a little bit lagging behind or a little bit peripheral, do you think that this methodology would also promote the creation of business?
Yes, yes. And how I know this is because in every context where this has been adopted, the SPDCs, it's worked. So again, the most difficult context I've ever seen, Chiquimula, Guatemala. Half of the SPDC clients can't read or write. They have significant development problems, security, illegal, migration, but they implement the SPDC methodology and they're creating results. So I think for any ecosystem, even the thing that we found out in many countries where they think that they have a very sophisticated ecosystem relating to entrepreneurship and small business program, ask a simple question: what are the results? Sometimes you'll have these incubators, tech incubators, and they get all this press, but when you ask them, okay, how much does this program cost and what are you producing? That clears everything up right away. And generally SPDCs are the only ones that are able to say, for this investment, these are the results that we're producing. And it can tie together any ecosystem. It fits in with any ecosystem in terms of entrepreneurship or small business development.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Cliff. Just last question, and you touched a little bit on it before. So do you work with directly with senior level actors in higher education institutions to define and introduce measures such as in governance or in teaching and learning, and which would result in more ideas arising from education and therefore increased deal flow to the SDBC?
Yeah, I mean, we're again, that's another very good question, very broad question. But yeah, the SPDCs are focused on results. We're focused on constant measurement, and so, again, we work with the higher education, our university hosts to understand that. The professors, the management, they all understand that the purpose of this program is to generate results, and so we measure, and the other thing too, I have found it has a positive impact on the university. So a lot of things that the SPDCs are doing in terms of center management, like in our university, we're a values-based leadership organization. There's many things that we're doing at the SPDCs that filter back to the university because we tend to be a little bit more market-oriented then sometimes, you know, the academic programs that sometimes, you know, lag a little bit behind.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I don't know if Anne, do you want to say something, or?
No, I was going to say
Julia.
that's kind of wrapped up our bit of questions and allows kind of end bang on time.
Because if Julia agrees, we can move to conclusions okay. Because I would like to really thank Cliff Paredes for participating in this discussion. Cliff, you offered a lot of information and insights to this community that has been developing in lockdown, COVID, and etc., and that now is, you know, generating this policy dialogue about the geography of higher education. My last word about today, about the discussion we had today, is that it's really interesting that universities can operate, you know, to connect different levels of government, different policies. So again, this complementarity issue that we sometimes have touched upon. And I think that it is a very modern way to approach the role of universities and higher education institutions more in general in ecosystems and network. It will be, I mean, the point about measurement with clear targets and with this idea of having goals and making progress towards a target is something that we have also discussed with previous speakers, specifically, you know, focusing on the need of high frequency data and data flows that can inform you about constantly about the path that you are developing for your policy. And I think that also the new role that the higher education institutions can have will be fundamentally important in the recovery phase after the COVID-19 pandemic, in the regeneration of economic system, businesses of all ages, all, you know, sizes, because we will need that kind of mobilization, and we're very much in need of the intellectual research and teaching resources that are in higher education institutions scattered in the geography of countries, businesses, etc. So I think that your contribution is very important to our policy dialogue, and I hope that there will be other occasions to connect and finally meet face-to-face in person very soon. Thank you very much. Julia.
Thank you very much. Let me just add that I think what you told us is very relevant, because it's a clear example of how internationalization activities can also be very much connected to knowledge exchange activities. So internationalization is more than just international students or Erasmus students, if we take the European example. So that was extremely interesting. I also liked very much the example you made on Guatemala. It's so important to adapt and connect to the local ecosystem in which you operate. And so sometimes, you know, you also need to think beyond technologies or, you know, deep techs.